I really shouldn't watch too much of Obama prior to coming on the air because then it puts me in a bad mood. Because I think to myself, how did we get stuck with this guy? He is so craven in his obsession to win a second term. Every move he makes, every statement he makes is geared to that. And if you think I'm being overly harsh, not at all. I can tell you that Barack Obama's ACORN red shirts are still terrorizing and ripping off American taxpayers. I'm going to tell you much more. Actually, I'm not going to tell you much more. I don't have to tell you much more. We're going to be talking to a man who has written an excellent expose called Subversion Incorporated. I'm talking about Matthew Vadum, who's going to be joining us straight ahead. All right, ladies and gentlemen, from the studios of the Small Business Authority at WABC, the Bob Grant program, and I am absolutely delighted to be able to introduce to you on the program the author of Subversion Incorporated. And I'm talking about Matthew Vadum, who has authored other books and has done such a great job in trying to expose the perfidious existence of the Obama administration. Thank you for joining us, Matthew.
Well, thank you. It is an honor to be on your show, Bob.
All right. There's so much stuff here in your book, which is entitled Subversion Incorporated. And naturally, I noticed the subtitle, How Obama's ACORN Red Shirts Are Still Terrorizing, Ripping Off American Taxpayers.
Was that nuanced enough for you, Bob?
Well, it's amazing when you have to say are still doing this. What happened?
What happened is that ACORN is just playing dead. They're playing possum. They filed for the lead organization, ACORN Inc., now based in Brooklyn on Nevin Street, about a mile from the Brooklyn Bridge, filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy on Election Day when they figured nobody would notice. But a year before that, they ordered their state chapters to start reorganizing themselves under assumed names. So, for example, right there in New York State, ACORN New York became New York Communities for Change. California, they became Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. Texas, they became Texas Organizing Project. Pennsylvania, they became something called Action United. And it just goes on and on and on. So they're not gone at all.
I have to admire their creativity. They know how to how to come up with the names.
Well, absolutely. I think they learned it all from Al Capone and Frank Nitti.
Want to know something? I think Al Capone and Frank Nitti were preferable because they didn't pretend to be anything other than what they were.
They were more transparent, weren't they?
Yes. Speaking of transparent, we were supposed to get the most transparent administration in history. Has that happened?
No, absolutely not. I'd say it's the most. What's the opposite of transparency? Opaque? Opacity? It's the most opaque administration in history. Very, very secretive and dishonest. Did you know that President Obama's Housing and Urban Development Department gave an $80,000 grant to ACORN back in March?
How did they get? How'd that get under the radar? How were they able to do that?
Well, a grant was scheduled to be dispersed in January for $461,000. and somebody caught it at HUD and said, no, we can't hand this out because it's against the law. Congress banned federal funding of ACORN. So they recalled that grant. They canceled it. But then they suddenly changed their mind, and on March 1st, they gave ACORN Housing $80,000. ACORN Housing is still the same organization it was before. All they did is they got a legal name change. So now they're Affordable Housing Centers of America, and they're still in business, causing trouble, encouraging people to engage in squatting and to break into their foreclosed homes and all the other mayhem that they've been doing ever since they got started.
This is lawlessness in action and sanctioned by this administration.
Well, yeah, President Obama worked for ACORN. He was part of their Project Vote operation in 1992, and he helped to elect the very radical and totally corrupt, as it turned out, liberal senator from Illinois, Carol Moseley Braun, the one who was always playing patty cake with African dictators. And he really made a name for himself as a community organizer, and that really helped him in the community organizing world. So his ties to ACORN go back at least 19 years. And he's still running the administration right now just as Saul Alinsky would, using dishonesty and polarization and demonization of his enemies. Right now he acts like a Latin American Cadillo.
Why do you suppose so many people are oblivious to all this information that you have and I have and anybody who cares has?
Because President Obama has a cult of personality around him that he has encouraged, and the liberals who love him, there's still a hardcore of 41% of Americans who still adore him, and no matter what would happen, they're still going to back him because they have been entranced by him like he's a rock star or the Messiah. The same thing happened with Hitler during the Third Reich. So people gravitate towards charismatic leaders, and then they stop listening to reason altogether.
The reason I was so alarmed over some of the things you pointed out in the book is this second term that this president is absolutely obsessed with getting, will encourage him to stop at nothing.
He isn't he's not stopping at anything. His Justice Department, you recall, ignored the new Black Panther Party voter intimidation incident in Philadelphia. You recall where the uniformed Black Panthers were there with batons, trying to scare people out of voting. They dropped those charges, let them off scot-free. They haven't prosecuted ACORN. ACORN's employees have been convicted now of at least 55 counts of voter fraud. ACORN itself was convicted in Nevada of in a massive election fraud conspiracy, and ACORN the group is being sentenced August the 10th. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
Well, what will that mean? You said as a group it's being sentenced.
ACORN Incorporated was convicted in Nevada a few months ago in a fraud scheme. What had happened is the local people, and this was approved at the highest levels in ACORN, had an illegal cash compensation scheme. So if the voter registration canvassers brought in more than the quota of 20 per day, they got a cash bonus. And so that's illegal under Nevada state law. And because it encourages registration canvassers to just make up people like Mary Poppins and Mickey Mouse, who are always perennial favorites of ACORN to register.
All right. Now, we know that ACORN is, shall we say, inimical to true freedom, inimical to our way of life. We know that they're thugs. We know that they will stop at nothing. But can we put all the blame on Barack Obama? The reason I ask a question such as that is I noticed in your book you talk about a woman who for many years represented the 5th Congressional District of New Jersey, Marge Rauckheimer.
Right.
And when she was head of a committee that she headed years ago, I don't believe there was a Barack Obama administration.
No, there wasn't. And what happened is Marge Rauckheimer, I guess, as Republicans go, was fairly moderate. But the new Republican Congress in '95 that swept in with Newt Gingrich wanted to either abolish or at least reform the Community Reinvestment Act, which is a financial affirmative action law, basically saying strong-arming banks into giving money to people who can't afford to pay it back, especially minorities in the inner city. And ACORN basically attacked her congressional hearing, and they had to be thrown out. There were mass arrests, and it was crazy. But Marge, Congresswoman Rauckheimer, held the line and tried to maintain order. And things got so out of hand at a hearing in 1995 with all of ACORN's political theatrics that even Barney Frank condemned them. And Bruce Vento, the late congressman from Minnesota, very liberal.
Who was the congressman from Minnesota?
Bruce Vento.
Oh, yes, Vento. But Barney Frank, that's amazing. And yet, here, this same organization we're talking about is going on, and outside of some kind of arrest that may have fruition in Nevada, nothing else. It hasn't. They haven't taken the wind out of their sails.
Well, all they've done is that their funding base has been hurt substantially. So that's a major setback for them. But they are rebuilding. New York Communities for Change, the New York ACORN, renamed, has already taken in hundreds of thousands of dollars from large, wealthy liberal foundations. And the same is the case with the California ACORN Group, Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. They are raking in the dough. And it's just a matter of time before they start getting federal money again, too, because they're applying for it.
And that leads us back to the president, Barack the Boastful. And if he does get his second term, and I'm afraid he will, not that he deserves it, but he is so skillful at being devious, that ought to be the green light for this organization.
Well, yeah, absolutely. They favor a radical transformation of society. Their mission statement is something called the People's Platform, and it basically just reads like an American version of the Communist Manifesto. It talks about spreading the wealth around, and that's what these people are obsessed with. It really bothers them that their neighbor, if your neighbor has $1,000 more than you do, then he's your enemy. And this is the sort of class warfare thinking, the kind of divisiveness that Saul Alinsky-inspired organizers and President Barack Obama thrive on. And ACORN loves it, too. They love to stir up hatred towards the supposed rich. And we know that President Obama keeps ratcheting down the definition of what rich is. Soon we're all going to be considered rich.
And, of course, if you're not in Obama's camp, then that means all you're interested in is tax breaks for the big executives at the oil companies. What is this obsession with oil companies?
Well, left-wingers hate oil. They hate energy. They hate the idea of economic development, and they don't want America to keep developing. In fact, many of these environmentalist kooks would like to roll back America's development. They don't want new power transmission lines. They won't let us drill for oil in Alaska. They won't let us drill for oil in the Gulf of Mexico. They won't let us tap our natural gas resources. They won't let us mine our coal. We're the Saudi Arabia of coal, supposedly. We've got more than anybody else. They don't like the idea of us increasing our inventory of energy because that allows us to develop economically, and they view all economic development as the enemy of the environment. This is their crazy way of looking at it.
Crazy is very appropriate. Finally, I am stunned for this reason. What you have cited has been unfortunately correct. But where do they get this power to stand in the way of sensible progress?
Well, environmentalists and ACORN get it through intimidation and thuggery. ACORN, in particular, has mastered the art of intimidating corporations and governments. They will find a corporate CEO's home, surround it with an angry busload of activists, dump garbage on the lawn, wreck the lawn, bang on the windows, and scare the bejesus out of the family until it caves in and gives them what they want. And environmentalists absolutely do the same thing too, like chaining themselves to fences and driving spikes into trees so that lumberjacks will come along and kill themselves when they harvest the tree. These people operate outside the legitimate political process, and this is criminal behavior. And it's hard to believe that America has put up with it so long, but we've come to accept it as a society, and that's a terrible thing, because this sort of thuggery is the stuff of gangland warfare. It's not the stuff of politics in a democratic society.
I want to thank you for joining us. I wish everybody in America could read your book, would read your book, Subversion Incorporated, published by WND Books, World Network Daily, and the author, Matthew Vadum. What can I say except we need more of you? Thank you.
Thank you, and have me on anytime you want. There's lots more in the book.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Straight ahead, everybody, straight ahead.